Liz is one of the very experienced team of research nurses with a both paediatric and school nursing background, and she's going to run through her kind of top tips of why distraction is important and how we can do it well.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk about why health professionals have an obligation to improve the experience of immunisations for everybody involved, the rationale behind using distraction as a tool, and the importance of using effective distraction. And I'm going to give a personal overview of the toys that we use and think are really good. For me, immunising a healthy child is quite hard sometimes because they're saying they can speak, a lot of them. They're ventilated in ICU, so they don't say much. But when you're in the community and they're saying they don't want to be immunised, it's sort of you trying to work through that. And we used a lot of play in the paediatric ward, so that I found very helpful. But it is a stressful time for everybody involved, including the parents and the children. And there is now evidence to say that the procedures can lead to high levels of anticipatory fear, which can have long-term health consequences, including lower rates of immunisation. Medical and dental treatment is also avoided as people get older, and if they've had a bad experience being immunised, it may affect that a bit. So if we can improve the experience, then we can maybe improve young people's access to healthcare as well as other people, parents coming back maybe. The Cochrane Collaboration is an international network of more than 28,000 people, and they produce reviews that aim to provide some of the highest standards of evidence-based research in healthcare. And they did a study looking at psychological interventions and how it can help with the pain and distress for children and adolescents. The relevant significant findings that are useful in the community is effective distraction. They also mentioned hypnosis and combined cognitive behavioural interventions, which aren't very practical in 5 minutes. But most healthcare professionals in the community tend to immunise on their own. So it's trying to utilise distraction that you can do on your own with children. There was preliminary evidence too supporting information and preparation, which I really enjoy working in the school nursing team and immunising teenagers, and I think this is really relevant for them in terms of thinking more about how we inform and prepare them. So the Oxford English Dictionary says that distraction is something that prevents someone from concentrating on something else, but it must be effective and it must distract the child enough or the person enough so that they can actually not be aware of what's going on or improve that experience. It's usually play. It can be very simple. It can relieve stress and feelings of boredom. It creates an environment where stress and anxiety are reduced. It helps the child gain confidence and self-esteem because they can start interacting with the toys, and it can also provide an outlet for frustration and anger, which we have some good toys for that. It also connects you to the child in a positive way, and because at OVG we often go back to families, they tend not to ask for people but for toys, so we often go back and we kind of have left notes saying which toy to bring back, and they will ask for that. These are the sort of toys that we recommend for the 0 to 6 month old. Most important in this age group is really holding them. So this is, apart from they're using an orange needle, I have to point this out, this is a really good way to hold the children and pulling down on the leg that you're immunising into. Parents are the best ones to hold. They say that provides best comfort for this age group. And parents like to be guided with this. I think for this age group, this is when parents are most stressed. And so guiding them how to do it is good. And also the quicker the procedure, there's been studies to say that the longer the procedure takes, if the child's struggling, the parents then perceive this as more pain that the child's experiencing. Feeding the child is really good. Singing if you can, but I don't think that matters if you can't sing. And we find the rain sticks are amazing afterwards, just in terms of distracting this age group. The 6 to 12 month olds are similar toys. They like the wind-up toys that we've had outside. They don't like professionals. At this age group, children don't like strangers, so if you can hide, that's even better. Anna, one of our practice nurses, said bubble machines are probably the best investment a practice can make, and I've been told they're £10, but at this age group and from this age group upwards, they're very good. This child's being immunised in the shoulder. Sarah told me to point that out. That's not right either. It's very hard to find good pictures on the internet of how to actually immunise. I find that having the children, especially when you're doing the preschool vaccines is to have the children straddling the parents and pulling the arms down and not letting their feet touch the ground because they'll stand up. But then they can't see you coming. But you do say to them that they're going to feel a sharp scratch. But it's also worth working out what the parents have said to the children, because working with that is probably the best way forward. The noisy books are really good too, and the spotting books are really helpful. And those clappy hands, when they're really angry, they're very loud, but they like those. And also having rewards. And maybe having the reward in view can help them to distract them immediately afterwards. And also just to say that they need to be held really up to preschool age and held quite firmly. Broome, I've got references on the end of this, but Broome says that, what did he say? That children don't really learn self-restraint until they reach school age, so they will need to be held down for this. 3 to 6 year olds. So interactive games are very good, and the iPhones and iPads, but I'm not very good on those, but parents can bring those with apps on. Kaleidoscopes are good. They're an old-fashioned toy, but they work really well. They're a novel toy that you can give them afterwards. And in this age group, children can often blur. There's a blur in the line between fantasy and reality. So if you're using words like needles, you have to kind of be aware that knitting needles are needles too. And so it's just using really appropriate language for that age group. As I said, I do a lot of immunisation with teenagers, and we've seen all those expressions. Again, all these pictures are pretty rubbish in terms of how to immunise, but I like their faces. So when we immunise in schools, the teenagers will often have to walk across a big hall towards us, which is quite intimidating for them. And then the common fears that teenagers have is that they're having a needle or something, a foreign body going into them, despite lots of piercings on lots of them. But they don't like the idea of a liquid going into them. They've got a fear of pain. And even though they have an assembly before the immunisations happen, I don't think many of them listen, because none of them really understand why they're having the vaccine. So we often go through that with them. Other stresses are watching others being vaccinated. It's quite hard to get the really nervous ones to listen, because they can see all these and hear others being immunised, because we're all dotted around on tables. Some of them with a history of fainting, or especially with the HPV vaccine, the second and third are quite traumatic because they've had that, they remember the pain. As a lot of people know, I teach yoga, and I think that really helps if you teach them to do really good breathing techniques. And when we teach yoga to children, we talk about taking a deep breath in and thinking of somebody you're strong for, which kind of, that works, I think. They kind of feel empowered by that. And then when they're breathing out, you're breathing out the tension. Or you talk about things that interest them, and maybe getting them to sort of imagine getting dressed in the morning, things like that. Some of them don't want you to talk at all. Hard for me. And music, there's a lot of studies to say music helps, but when we have tried that, the nurses, there's a bit of arguments going on about what music to use. So, but I think music can be helpful. When young people are really adamant that they don't want the vaccine, you kind of talk to them about taking responsibility for their own health. And you're trying to sort of empower them a bit, and just saying that you can't do it if they're going to move, so it's a trust thing between us and them. That works sometimes. And sometimes if they just have some time out, we've had a lot of kids come back afterwards. They just go back to their class and then they'll come back. But it's not telling them off, it's just acknowledging their fears. And also explaining when they come to see you, if their fingers, they often say, oh, my fingers are cold, or their bellies are hurting. And it's just explaining that this is just them being stressed and the action of adrenaline, and then work just so that they don't associate that sensation with the vaccine. That seems to help as well. There's a lot of mass reactions when you immunise in schools. So we have crash mats, which we lie them all down on. And when they had the outbreak of Membe in New Zealand, they changed the way they immunised, and they started using separate areas, and that seemed to work better. And they banned all mobile phones because apparently they were texting each other about how awful it was. The other thing is that it's difficult anyway to distract them in a large hall. You're making them all undress in front of each other. Sometimes that's girls and boys, which is traumatic. So it's just really thinking about those sort of things, but also getting the schools to engage, because we don't have much area to immunise in, and we don't have an area before they come in where they can relax, and so they wind each other up there. So it's really just to say that as health professionals, we need to ensure that the immunisation experience is the best that we can make it. The evidence implies that health professionals have a duty of care to improve the experience for children and their families prior to, during and after immunisations, and individuals should be reflecting on their own practice in relation to distraction. We need to consider the environment in which we immunise, the preparation we use and the information we give, and think about introducing props to aid distraction. The government's latest pledge, Better Health Outcomes for Young People, Children and Young People, our pledge, says that we should be providing good mental and physical health and early interventions for young people, and organisations will work in partnership for the benefit of children and young people. So I don't know if we can quote that at schools. And also Children and Young People's Health Outcome Forum says that we should provide, children are saying that they want to be provided with information about their care and have decisions about their health care, so maybe we should let them choose the music. These guys aren't for sale, but this is our play team who can give information on where the toys are, but they distract us as well during times when we need it. And there's our reference list, which you might be able to read.